So we've heard about these trips, but you mentioned what a motivating thing this is for the students. Is that the key, you think, to get students motivated to learn to dive into these tough questions, is actually to put them in those real life, everyday conversations with skeptics?
Yeah, I think that's part of the key, especially when they are high school students. I think one thing that's informed my view and my wife's view about education is kind of the classical approach, where you have this three-part process of training the mind. And you've got the grammar stage, which is, kind of the elementary age. You've got the logic stage, where you're teaching kids really then how to think. But then that fourth stage, which is typically high school, is the rhetoric stage. And that's where we need that's where in education, you're helping them articulate, you're helping them take the facts and the truth, put it together with good, reasonable thinking, and then articulate arguments and articulate the truth. And I think that's a real missing piece in a lot of our discipleship with young people. And it is one of the key ways that you can motivate a young person. And so our biblical trip, we focus on, theology and scripture, and we take students to Salt Lake City, Utah, and we just put them in situations where they have to talk to Mormons. And I have seen students go out and maybe talk to a Mormon who seems to know their Bible way better than the student and just owns the kid, if you will, right? In student language, they get owned and they come back. And of course, sometimes they might get discouraged by that. And so we encourage them, but what we try to help them do is help them see, well, what does that reveal? It reveals that you don't know the scriptures, you don't know Christian truth, maybe as well as you thought you did. And for almost all the students, this becomes motivation because they know we're going to go out and talk to more Mormons the next day. Yeah. So I don't have to tell them what to do. They go find their books. They go find the training books that we've used. They go get the Book of Mormon out or whatever, the Mormon scriptures, and then they do their homework and they research and they prep and then they ask questions, and they're so teachable at that point because they know that, they're going back out. And so I think sometimes with a very maybe apathetic, comfortable American church and youth groups that just fit that mold as well, one of the best ways to motivate them is put them in those challenging situations. In fact, one of my mentors, mentor to many of us, J.P. Moreland, right? He said, I remember him saying, if you want to grow, purposely put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Yeah. And so that's what we're doing. We're purposely putting these kids in uncomfortable situations that ends up motivating growth in them. And it's amazing at the end of these trips, they grow leaps and bounds more than any youth program I have ever seen in my over 25 years of working in youth ministry or with youth ministry. I haven't seen anything this effective. But you have some written materials as well that you have them fill out beforehand to kind of generate the need as well. Tell us about those, like the written portion. One thing that we have put together is what we call student guidebook. But one of the first things that we do is we have them take kind of an evaluation survey that asks some questions about their biblical knowledge, about their apologetics knowledge. We also ask them questions about kind of rating themselves in terms of their comfort level in sharing the gospel or engaging about a cultural issue. So they fill that out before they ever start the training or the trip. And then we also have them fill that out at the end of it as well, after the trip's done, so they can really actually even see their own growth. And we'll take students on the biblical immersive experience to Utah. And we're talking solid groups, like solid Christian, kids, we would say are committed. And it no longer surprises me how many of those committed Christian kids can't name a single Bible verse from memory that points to one of the great, doctrines of Christianity, like the Trinity or, salvation by grace through faith. They just don't know where in Scripture these things are taught at all. And so they'll leave those things blank. And then so that's motivating for them to do something like that, to be tested just on their knowledge. And in the training, there's videos they watch, but we require them to read books. There's at least one book that we require per trip, But then they also have to take tests, and we require that they score 70% or higher in these short answer tests. And if they don't, they have to retake the test and pass with a 70% before that they can go on these trips. So that's another way for us to kind of motivate them, also raise that bar. And what we found is that when we raise that bar for young people, that's also motivating as well, because they feel dignified. They don't feel like we're treating them like kids, but they're young adults.
Yeah.
And we treat them as such. And so we find kind of that whole training process is very motivating for young people.